Hello, everyone, and welcome to Practicing Lean Accounting. I'm Mike DeLuca. Nick Katko will be joining us in just a few moments. Just want to, oh, Nick is joining us. Hi, Nick. So I just want to get us kicked off here, and really glad you're joining us for this webinar this morning. And this is the first in a series of webinars where we'll be presenting material from an upcoming book that we're working on together, Practicing Lean Accounting. So delighted that you're joining us. Let me go through a few housekeeping things to get started. You should be able to see and download a copy of the presentation in the GoToWebinar control panel. So those are available to you there. Also, if you require continuing education credit, please you'll need to stay in attendance for the entire 50 minutes of the event, and then answer all 3 of the attendance check questions. And in order to get credit, you need to be attending the event live, not listening to the recorded webinar afterwards. So I just wanted to go through those couple of housekeeping things.
Mike, let me just do a technical check here. Can everyone see us, hear us, and see the presentation? Just type yes in chat if you
Great.
can.
Thank you.
Okay, we're okay.
Super.
Continue on.
All right, great. So let's just do a quick overview of the things that we want to talk about today. As we're thinking about practicing lean accounting, it's important for us to talk about accounting's role. Accounting has varied roles in the organizations where we work. And so we want to cover that and think about how that really impacts how we think about lean in accounting. And then also, as we think about the roles that we play in accounting, we want to think about or talk about how a new practice or practicing lean accounting really stems from embracing lean thinking in accounting. So we'll go through that, and talk more specifically about what that looks like in the accounting functions, and then how that really translates to the practices or the activities that we do in our daily work, depending on the function or functions that you play in the accounting team. And then we'll do a preview of what's next as far as the ongoing learning opportunities. So with that, let's get started. Now, this is a this is a really maybe an overly simplified, but an organizational visual that we wanted to look at just to try to understand how accounting not only plays many functions, but that there are a couple of key distinctions between the types of functions that we play. And on the left, you can see the financial accounting functions. And these are functions that are, to some degree, production oriented. We produce things like we pay invoices, we send out bills, and we post payments, we issue payroll, we do transactional work around the close of the financial period. And then on the other side, there's the great deal of work that we do in management accounting, where we're doing financial plans for operational and capital expenses. We're supporting decision support. We're ensuring that the cash flow of the organization is working well and is adequate and robust. And so those are somewhat distinct roles. In some cases, individuals may play a part in both of them. But the distinction that we want to make is on the financial accounting side, there is more of a rhythm and a production to the work, and there are more periodic concrete outputs. In management accounting, the cycles of the work can be very various and really depend on the organization's needs. And so we want to think about those differently. Also, financial accounting, more so of the two, has an external reporting function or a compliance or regulatory function. And the commonality between these different functions and roles for the accounting teams is that they both rely on a mastery of analytical thinking. So that is common, and we'll see that as that comes through. But as we think about lean accounting, we do talk about a lot about starting with thinking. And the idea here is that in order to sustain a practice, we need to understand the why. So we're going to be shifting and evolving and enhancing the way that we function in accounting. But in order for that to be really meaningful, and not to have it be superficial or more tactical, it has to be really backed up with understanding the rationale and the intent. And so it's important for us in accounting to understand what is lean and what does it mean for my organization? Why is my organization adopting lean thinking? And that's at the background. And then once we've really understood or worked to understand the reason, the rationale, the intent, and the benefits of lean and what lean means, then we can really apply that to practices that we do in accounting in order to improve our work, to improve the information that we're able to give the organization, and then to really support the organization with lean financial leadership. So let's just talk for a minute about this idea of a practice. We started with the idea of thinking comes before the practice, or is required for the practice to be really robust. But what is a practice? And what we want to get at is a practice is the idea that it's an ongoing activity, a habitual, something that you've done so thoroughly and so consistently that it becomes natural, it becomes a habit, it becomes the way that we operate. And so as we think about this, it's important to realize or to consider that lean thinking or lean practice is not project based. It's not next week I'm going to do a lean accounting project. It is the way that we think about all of the work from on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah,
And so, go ahead.
No, what I was going to say is, you know, Mike and I are both former financial people in companies. You know, in finance and accounting, there's this rhythm, this cycle. You know, we pay bills once a week, we close the books once a month. So it's sort of transactional in nature. Okay, we close the month and then we're going to do it again in 4 or 5 weeks. And you know, there's a start and a stop. You know, we pay the bills. Okay, we started, we stopped. And you know, when it comes to lean accounting doesn't start and stop. You just always are practicing it. And this is why it's important to focus on thinking, because it's a new way to think in addition to all the regular work you do.
And it actually becomes the way you think about the work that you do. And
Yeah.
so that I think is one thing that's challenging in the transition, is that when we start lean in accounting, we may have the reaction, oh, this is an add-on, this is something new. And it really becomes an evolution of the way we think about the work, which is why we think about it as a practice. So with that lean thinking at the base, I think it's helpful to think about these practices organized in a particular way. And the way that we've organized this is that there are foundational practices in lean thinking. And these are practices that you can see here: value, waste, continuous improvement, or plan, do, check, adjust, and measurement. These are practices that anyone learning lean in any part of the company is going to have to master and apply to their work. What we're going to talk about is how these foundational practices, these foundational aspects of lean thinking, really are meaningful and applicable in accounting. And then once these foundational practices, once you're familiar with these, and once you're working on practicing and mastering them, then we think about, okay, now how do these uniquely apply to those two very, somewhat broad and comprehensive roles that accounting plays in the organization? If I took each of these foundational practices, all 4 of them, how would I think about those in improving the accounting, the financial accounting practices and processes and activities like payroll, like accounts payable, receivables, and period end close? How do I apply those? And similarly, if I'm in financial planning, if I'm in decision support, if I'm playing a role in one of those functions, how again would I apply these 4 foundational practices in those areas? And then as we develop all of the thinking and the practice in lean accounting, we really begin to enhance, and it doesn't really matter where you are in the accounting function, but we begin to play more and more of a partner and a leadership role in the organization. And this idea of lean financial leadership being sustaining, it's sustaining a couple of things. It's number one, it's sustaining the ability of the accounting teams to continue to apply lean thinking to improve the work and the outcomes. But I think as importantly, maybe even more importantly, the sustaining leadership role is allowing the accounting teams, and this is everyone from individual contributors up to people with the leadership title, to really play a role for the entire organization in advancing the whole lean transformation. So I think this is really significant, and you can see the arrows pointing back down because it's a continuous cycle of learning and practice. So Nick, I'll hand it over to you here.
Okay. You can still do the slides, okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So we're going to now start about lean thinking for accounting. And you know what's important to understand here is that anytime any of us as human beings, you know, we're trying to learn something new. And so, you know, it requires a shift in thinking. I mean, just, you know, think about yourself personally, whether it was a subject in school or college, whether you, for example, play a musical instrument, or maybe you took up a sport. Even if you took a sport up when you were a child, you had to learn certain basic fundamentals, and you had to think a little bit differently to understand those fundamentals. But then the more that you practice, the more it became more of a habit rather than overtly concentrating on it. And so, you know, the foundation for lean accounting is lean thinking. And so, but what do accounting and finance people need to know about lean? That's the issue. As we talk about in the book, is you don't have to be a lean expert in order to want to start lean accounting or go on a lean accounting transformation in your company. What's important is to understand the different perspectives of lean. How does lean impact businesses? And there's 5 ways. 1 is strategic, 2nd is financial, 3rd is operational, 4th is managerial, and 5th is cultural. So those are the perspectives, and now we're going to look at each one of these perspectives in a little detail. More than anything, lean is a comprehensive business strategy. Companies that are successful with lean, and maybe you know you've read about them, or maybe you work in one of these companies. If the approach from the company viewpoint is it is a comprehensive business strategy, lean will work. You know it, and likewise, if it's not approached as a strategy or as another check the box activity to do, that's where you see companies don't do well with it, or they restart lean a few times, or they just forget about it. Mm-hmm. So the focus of lean, and this is a different type of strategy than most business strategies, is it's a people-centered learning and improvement strategy. It's about people learning about problems and issues and solving them. It's also very long-term in nature. The overall goal is to serve customers better. Like any business strategy, you have to have alignment. All of the functions in the business need to support the strategy. And all of you who work in companies, you know this. It's nothing new. But when you adopt lean, it does change the focus of functions as to what's important and what's not important. And finally, a lean strategy or lean thinking is principle-based, you know, continuous improvement and respect for people. So these principles are guiding principles, sort of like true north. Is that's we're going to live. I'm sorry, we're going to work every day according to these principles. And so, from a lean accounting viewpoint, lean is the fabric of your strategy. And so in accounting, when it comes to strategic planning or a financial plan aligned with the strategy, there are changes which have to be recognized. The next perspective is the financial viewpoint. Hold on, economics of lean. Good. So how does lean make money? Well, we talked about a people-centered learning and improvement strategy. So that was the result of that is continuous improvement throughout the organization. The primary output or the primary benefit that you get through continuous improvement is creating capacity, or another way to say it is more time. You eliminate waste, you free up time. It's as simple as that. So from a financial viewpoint, the financial benefits of lean are primarily what do you do with all this capacity you're creating? Ideally you allocate that capacity to more value-added activities. You deliver value to your customers, create a competitive advantage, and grow revenue. Likewise, you can apply that capacity to it in different ways inside business, and over the long term, achieve some cost reduction. So it's the application of the capacity, what you do with it, that drives the financial success. And so what's important there, or what's important to understand from an accounting viewpoint, is that the economics of lean need to be clearly understood inside the business. Accounting must mentally inhabit this, that this is the way it works. And this is going to cause a shift in thinking, a shift in analysis. And
part of the shift is just that as you've talked about here, lean is not a near-term cost-cutting methodology.
Right. Yeah. And accounting, based on your position in the organization, accounting departments are well respected. Leaders in accounting are well respected because we have this professionalism about us. We have this independent streak. We're supposed to be objective about things, especially when we do a financial analysis. So I think, accounting can be the thought leaders in the company in terms of explaining how lean works financially, because there's a whole lot of explanation about how lean works operationally, but there's not a whole lot about financially. Mm-hmm. So again, this is another perspective of lean. The third is operational perspective. Any activity in a business, in any process, doesn't matter if it's accounting, manufacturing, healthcare, restaurant, from a lean viewpoint, there's three types of activities. Value-added activities that actually directly impact the company's customers. There's non-value-added but necessary activities that are performed, but they don't add value, but for whatever reason, they have to be performed. And then there's the non-value-added activities, which are waste. Now, let's just look at this from an accounting viewpoint. And let's take accounts payable. So you think about it from the customer's perspective, the businesses or the individuals who are receiving checks from accounts payable or payments. What is the only value-added step in accounts payable according to the customer? That is the actual processing of the payment. Okay, it's cutting the check. We're doing the wire transfer. Everything before that, receiving the invoice, entering the invoice, getting an approval they're not creating value. Your customers your suppliers really don't care how your accounts payable department works. All they want is to be paid on time and the right amount.
Mm-hmm.
So all this other work in accounts payable is non-value added, but necessary. Okay, you have to enter an invoice. How you enter the invoice? Well, maybe there's opportunities to simplify that. Then you have the waste. So think about approvals. So invoices need to be approved. That's good company policy. But let's say, for example, that you have a cumbersome approval process that's maybe like 3 or 4 people have to approve simple invoices because for one reason or another, these controls were put in because nobody trusted the process. Well, that's an example of waste. And so from an accounting viewpoint, we have a tendency to think that all the activities we perform are required. It's part of our job. But it requires a shift in thinking to understand what activities do our customers want us to perform, and this whole other big basket of activities, how can we reduce them or eliminate them?
And that's not to say that we don't really manage and create good control processes in the organization,
Yeah.
but what we're doing is looking to make sure that they're actually effective and as simple and straightforward as possible. Many of those approval steps you mentioned may be somewhat empty. Those review steps or those approval steps, those checking steps might not actually be a robust control. And so it's really, our role then becomes, to your point, Nick, is this, if this is necessary, is it really effective and efficient?
Yeah. The other lean operational perspective for lean accounting is for accounting to recognize that it is really part of larger cross-functional business processes. Yes, we do certain things in accounts payable, okay? But accounts payable is part of this larger procure to pay process. What I always said when I was a CFO and I was talking to my accounting team is I would say, look, we're at the end of the line, okay? And so if problems and issues occur upstream and they don't get fixed, we usually catch them. For example, a missing invoice that went to someone and they put it on their desk and forgot about it. The supplier calls accounting, says, hey, how come you haven't paid that invoice? And accounting says, what invoice? We don't have it. It's stuff like that. So in the lean accounting world, you will have to sort of recognize that accounting is part of these larger processes. And when it comes time to improvement, you're going to have to collaborate with those other parts of the larger process, because of the reason I talked about a few minutes ago, is that if there's a problem and issue in accounting, but the source of the problem and issue is upstream, well, we have to improve together. So this is not about, it's not saying we don't have good internal controls, things like that. It's about trying to resolve problems and issues. So it's important for accounting to recognize this. I do want to tell one quick story about this. I did some work a couple of years ago at a small company in Florida, and they had an accounts payable, they had accounting and accounts payable, and then they had purchasing. And the owner of the company was adamant that accounting and purchasing didn't get along, and they really disliked each other. And so I talked to each of the teams individually just to listen. And it was really funny how accounting said, oh, well, I emailed this stuff to purchasing and they never get back to us, and they're always busy doing something else. Purchasing said the same thing about accounting. And the funny thing is these two teams were just down the hall from each other, yet they wouldn't get up and go talk to each other. They did it via email. But what we did is we actually brought them together, and we pointed out that, each party is dependent on the other to resolve problems and issues. And so we created more of a team approach in terms of daily problem solving rather than pushing emails back and forth. So, it's important for accounting to provide leadership to break down these artificial functional barriers in these larger cross-functional business processes. From the managerial perspective, it's about value streams. So here we see a typical vertical organizational chart. That's the structure, that's the power structure, that's the managerial structure. But in Lean, we have value streams. Customer-focused value streams are cross-functional. They go through different departments. From a Lean thinking point of view, value streams are the sort of the way to organize resources, manage the work, plan, and improve. Because a value stream creates value for its customers. Now, this is not to say that the organizational chart changes. That's a whole separate issue. But the value stream management needs to be elevated above departmental management, because the goal from an operational viewpoint is maximize value stream performance rather than optimize individual departmental performance. So how does this impact Lean accounting? Well, value streams are the profit centers of a Lean company. Okay, you receive an order into a customer-focused value stream, you produce a product or you deliver a service, and you generate revenue. So in terms of sort of the managerial accounting side and analysis and decision support, we want to align the numbers and align the analysis by value stream. And again, accounting people, we think in terms of departments and cost centers and expenses, but we want to think about expenses and revenue according to value streams. The final perspective is cultural. And this is sort of the people side of Lean, and it begins with learning. Okay, a Lean culture is a learning culture. Okay, we take the time to study processes, understand problems and issues, and try to solve them. Okay, learning takes time. Now, accounting, we are naturally doers. We have lots of work to do. We process transactions, we pay bills, we always have something to do. So from a Lean accounting viewpoint, it's incumbent to set aside time for learning. Now, this could be something as simple as a daily huddle in accounts payable to understand problems and issues. Yes, you have to set aside time for improvement also. So and I was talking to a company the other day, and the CFO was talking about how busy everybody in accounting always is. They're always busy. They always have a lot of work to do. They're overworked. Okay, why are they overworked? Well, she admitted it. They're firefighting. So, we've encountered companies over the years that sometimes say, oh, well, Lean accounting sounds good, but we're too busy with other stuff. The second is personal growth. In accounting, we think technically. We have to become more technically proficient. We don't want to go away from that, but what we want to do is we want to sort of supplement that personal growth with, understanding our customers better, understanding these dynamic systems in the company, like value streams, and how do they operate, and what connections can we make between operational aspects of a value stream and financial results. So we want to expand personal growth. We want to challenge everyone in accounting to learn and grow beyond being a good accountant. The third cultural piece in lean thinking is investing in employees. Lean companies think of their employees as full-fledged business partners. They don't think in terms of management and then workers. And so we have to invest in learning and growth. This is not about a training dollar or training budget. This is about, managers taking time to work with the people that they manage in terms of learning and growth, in terms of problem solving. It's an investment more in time than money. The next is collaboration. And there's a few layers to this. Number one is employees who do the work know the work the best. So you may be a CFO, you may be a controller, you may have more experience in those positions than the people working in accounts payable or working in accounts receivable. But that doesn't, just because you have the experience doesn't mean you know what the real problems and issues are, because you don't work in them every day. So collaboration is, getting away from top-down management. Managers need to listen to their employees. There needs to be a no-blame environment. Employees need to be able to speak up about problems and issues, which leads us to the fifth perspective of respect for people. There needs to be a no-blame environment that, I can walk into my manager's office and I can talk about anything related to the business or the process without getting blamed or without being thought I'm not a team player. And, in a lot of companies, even lean companies, talking about the real problems and issues still is sort of, it's not thoroughly encouraged. And so people sort of, they don't want to talk about it. And we got to create this environment where we respect people for the work they do. They're all contributors to the company. And again, it creates, respecting people creates this great culture. So I think we're going to do attendance check 1. So I'm going to select a poll, and the attendance checks are for CPAs who want to get continuing education credit. So just to check that you're still attending. Alrighty, so I'm going to close that poll. I'm not going to share the results. And we'll go back to the presentation, and I'll turn it back over to Mike.
Thanks very much. So we'll get into each of these lean accounting practices at a pretty high level, because the subsequent webinars go into them in detail. And I actually want to just share a little bit about this last element of lean thinking, the cultural perspective, because I mean, I'll just speak for myself. When I was executive director of finance, I had a team of 30 folks that reported up to me, doing various financial planning, decision support, transactional, other roles. And I thought, okay, well, this is, I initially thought, well, this is going to be great for us to improve our work. But I think the lean cultural perspective, it's really helpful for us as accounting practitioners and professionals and leaders to think about this. Is actually part of the practice as well. And I'll just 2 quick examples. One, we did a lot of work, like Nick said, to get out of firefighting mode and to create some capacity within the accounting and finance team in order to take on new, different, and higher value added work for the organization. But that allowed us to do a couple of things in terms of professional growth, we were able to, folks always said, oh yeah, we're supposed to do our professional development, but when are we supposed to do it, right? Because the work weeks are always so busy. But we actually created enough capacity that we could carve out a certain amount of time during the week that folks could dedicate to their own research and professional and ongoing professional development. But another way that it really became embedded in the practice of the daily work was when new projects or assignments came up, we aligned how we assigned those with what folks' development interests and goals were. So it just, this whole idea around doing the work, these cultural elements just became imbued in the actual day-to-day practice. So this is the visual that we looked at earlier. We've been talking about and wanted to spend more time talking about how lean thinking really is important for accounting to understand in order to just get started. And so that's why we've been going over these elements of lean thinking for the organization and how they relate to accounting and finance. So now we'll go over each of these levels or layers of practices for accounting in a little bit more detail. So let's look at thinking differently and how it relates to the 4 foundational practices. I'm just going to put them all up on the screen here so I can talk to them in a sequence. And the foundational practices and like I said before, these are aspects of lean thinking and lean practice that anyone learning lean, whether you're in customer-facing operations or information technology or human resources or supply chain, these apply to all of us. And so when we apply these foundational practices to accounting and finance, we have to think. And Nick gave an example earlier from thinking about value. We have to think about not just who the company's customers are, but who are our customers. And so this is interesting because in some cases, we are 1 or more steps removed from the company's end customer. And so if we think about the accounts payable perspective, well, the direct customer of that process is the vendor who's submitting the invoice and is expecting to get paid in a timely fashion and correctly. And so that's the direct customer of the process, and we have to think about what matters to them and how are we providing that value in the most effective, highest quality, most efficient, and most cost-effective way possible. But we also have to connect those things that we do to then what is the translation to the value for the company's end customer. And one way to make that translation, sticking with accounts payable, is that in order for the company to effectively provide timely and high quality services for its end customers, we need to have good vendor relationships. And part of sustaining and maintaining good vendor relationships is something that's on its surface seems as simple as paying invoices correctly and on time. There are other situations where we do actually directly engage with the company's customers, and in particular, this comes up with in submitting bills to customers and then collecting payments from them. Their experience of how easy that is, since that's not necessarily a value-added activity for them, they wanted to get a product or service from us, but what they're getting from the finance or the accounting team is a bill, right? So that's part of the transactional requirement in order to get the product or service. They want that to be as easy as possible. So if you think about, and I'll just think about a quick example is if you go to purchase a car, and you might spend a couple of hours and you're like test driving a car and doing all of the things that are important to you as a future car owner for finding the right fit, the best car, the best value. And then you spend 4 to 6 hours sitting in someone's office signing papers, right? That's the accounting part of the process. That's not value added. Now, I think, I said 4 to 6 hours is an extreme, but that's actually been my experience where it takes many hours to go through that process. And as a customer, that impacts my overall experience of engaging with the company. And so I've worked with a number of companies who have negative customer feedback simply because once they've purchased the service or the product, the billing portion of it becomes so onerous that it actually is destructive to the customer's relationship with the organization. So that's the value foundational practice. Waste, of course, are the things that get in the way of it. And these are things that we get so used to because we do it every day, we may not even notice them. We talked about examples earlier, the approval steps that we go through, a number of the activities that we engage in are really not necessarily in advancing the work to getting either our immediate customer or the company's end customer something that they need or care about. And we become used to those activities. And so, like I said, we may not notice them, or even if we notice them, we may not yet really have either the thought process or even the empowerment to address those. And that's where PDCA, this continuous improvement or plan, do, check, adjust, which is the continuous root cause problem solving improvement cycle, really is asking us to think differently about managing and improving our own work. And that's the application of that practice. But none of this really works unless we know how we're doing. If we're not measuring, and this measurement at so many levels in lean accounting, we'll talk about this when we get into the applied practices in a moment, is if I'm not measuring, I mean, it's something as simple as measuring the lead time or the timeliness of payments to vendors. How am I paying vendors relative to my contractual terms with them? Maybe it's net 30, maybe it's something else. And also timeliness, how many vendors offer me an early payment discount and I'm just completely missing that because I'm not tracking to that. So what am I measuring, and is that really helping me understand whether or not I'm making progress? How am I understanding my capital capacity by looking at my days in sales outstanding? What about my my billing and my collections from customers and those as well. So how am I measuring progress and results for not just the accounting function, but then really understanding how that applies to how I measure organizational results as well. So we went through, actually, I think I talked through all of these just on the first slide, but I think the important thing that Nick, you brought up earlier is this idea of using continuous improvement is shifting us out of this firefighting mode. And I've worked with so many organizations who are trying to improve their month end or their period end close cycle. And so much of it is at the end of the month, now we're trying to fix all of the things that didn't either get documented correctly or captured correctly or assigned correctly or posted correctly during the month. And so we're doing all of this last minute firefighting, and it's firefighting because there's a time sensitive window in which we have to finish it. We've got to be done by the 4th working day or the 4th business day or whatever that might be. And so now we're in fix it at the end firefighting mode. And this happens in so many different aspects of our work. And the lean thinking and this foundational practice of identifying the wastes and continuous improvement is really asking us to get ahead of that and say, what would we do to prevent the firefighting? How could we get into fire prevention mode? So I want to talk about the applied practices, because these foundational practices, like I said, everyone who's learning lean in the organization is going to learn who's my customer, what's important to them, what's the wastes that are getting in the way, how do I continuously improve, and then how do I measure so that I can check that I'm making progress so that my services are stable. These foundational practices really come into very sort of effective use when we're thinking about both improving accounting, the financial accounting, some of the more production and time-based and transactional work, as well as the financial management work that we do in the organization. And so for improving accounting, what Nick, you mentioned earlier was we have to always, I mean, there are very, very few processes that we do in accounting and finance that don't either have inputs from or outputs to or collaboration with some other function in the organization. Whether it's someone in operations having issued a purchase request that becomes a purchase order, and then weeks or months down the road we're dealing with an invoice, but we're frustrated because something didn't go right upstream in that process.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Accounting departments are generally well run. Okay, there's you pay the bills, you send the invoices out, close the month. So it's not like, they don't work, but it's how effective are they in getting that work done?
Mm-hmm.
Because what we want to do is, we want to get away from, for example, month end. Yeah, we close quick, but the accounting team works their tails off for 12 or 14 hours over 3 or 4 days to meet that deadline. That's not lean. The question is, how can you get the close done in 3 or 4 days with less burden on the team? Likewise, in accounts payable, and maybe this might resonate with some of you, but yeah, accounts payable, they get the invoices processed and they pay the bills at once a week. But how many of the accounts payable team are coming in early, working through lunch, or staying late because they don't have enough time to get their work done for various reasons? The idea of improving accounting is creating this cadence and rhythm that it's not like you're not going to have problems and issues, but there's a rhythm to everything. And if there is a problem or an issue, there's a standard method to resolve it rather than firefighting.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, exactly. And actually, we're getting into the details about the first applied practice or improving accounting. So I just want to go ahead and move forward to that. And then one of the things you're talking about, and again, I'm going to continue to advance the slides here, because what we're doing is we're really unpacking this idea around improving the work that we do for our direct customers. And so, Nick, when you were talking about the month-end close, and you talked about what it actually takes in order to do that, this practice of asking, well, why is it taking us this long? Why does it take us 12 to 14-hour days for the last couple of days of the calendar month and the first couple of days of the calendar month just to get this to happen? And instead of going back to our cross-functional partners and saying, hey, what is it that we can do together so that during the month, we're setting ourselves up for success at the end of the month? And so we want to continue to think about this three-part structure, and you shared this in a different visual earlier, Nick, but what is it that we're doing in accounting and finance that actually helps create value for companies' customers? And that is where we do anything that directly touches the company's end customer. That's got to be as easy and simple and almost, how would we help the company delight its customers in the billing and payment collection process, right? How would we do that? And then for all of the things that we do that are necessary in order to the business to run effectively and have effective controls and effective plans, then what can we be doing in our financial accounting functions to improve the quality of those? So the right payment, whether it's to employees or to vendors, the right bill and a clear bill to the customer, delivered in a timely fashion, and really at the lowest associated cost. And so we have to think about, how productive are we around that? And then what's the lead time? I worked with one organization in their accounts payable team just because of the almost invisible waste in the process. In order to pay a vendor for a bill, the invoice had gone through so many handoff steps and approval steps that by the time it got back to accounts payable for processing, a month had already gone by. So it was almost impossible for the accounting team to be set up for success in order to pay the invoice on time. So those are the wastes that we really want to identify and then eliminate.
Okay, let's do our attendance check. Number 2. Again, just simply answer, attending or not attending. All right. I'm going to close the poll and we will move on.
So I want to talk about the application of these practices to our financial management or management accounting, and then financial leadership, and then we'll wrap up. We've already looked at these this idea of cross-functional business processes, but what we want to think about as we get into lean financial management is this, and again, this is the second interconnected role that accounting plays in the organization, is what's the information that we're providing the organization that leads them to making decisions and taking action that improve results, right? Improve customer-facing results, and then improve organizational results. And that can be growth, it could be profitability, it could be any number, whatever your organization has strategically prioritized. And so these foundational practices, just like we were talking about in improving accounting, we're talking about value and waste. And so what information is value added for folks in the organization? And I know my team, and I tell this story a lot, so I'll keep it really short because we don't have a ton of time to go through these last important points. But we produced, before we started lean thinking in our team, over 400 recurring monthly reports. And when you come down to this, how much of that information was really helping the organization make better decisions and take action that improved customer-facing outcomes and business results? And the short of the story is we got down from 400 plus reports to a little over 100, and then actually added some and enhanced some so that they were much more effective at supporting decision making. So those foundational practices of who's the end customer of this information, what do they value, right? Which is something that is clear that they can use, that reliable and relevant information that they can use to inform decisions and action. And so again, applying those concepts of foundational practices to, and continually improving those to our financial management or our management accounting processes is the important application of those foundational practices to the management accounting side of the overall accounting function.
Can you
and
go
so
back
it's
to the previous slide just for a moment?
Yep, we can.
What one point I wanted to make here is that, you know, when a company adopts lean as a strategy, the definition for internal users of what is quality information changes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important for accounting to recognize this. And, you know, and so there has to be this, you know, cross-functional collaborative discussion about what information do we need in a lean business, both financial and non-financial, so that we can make better decisions aligned with the strategy. That's really important for accounting to understand because, hey, you know, accounting produces a lot of analysis. And not all of the analyses that are done in a non-lean company, not all of them support lean.
Right.
Some do, but not all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
No, I think that's a really important transition to this last practice, the sustaining practice of lean financial leadership. And at the very top, we need to lead by example. And so to the point you just made, Nick, we have to be really clear when analysis and data and information are in alignment with the company's lean strategy versus not. What information will be most helpful in supporting decisions or informing decisions that are more lean oriented? And that's in all aspects. It's from information we learn during the period end close cycle. It's from information we learn in our financial planning processes. But it's also important for us to lead by example in the context of helping the organization remember this core tenet of lean as not a cost-cutting methodology, but a continuous improvement strategy of quality and delivery to the customer, which has as its benefit, among other things, financial performance improvement. So it's important for us to do that and to get out of this trap, and we'll talk about this more when we do the detailed webinar about this particular topic, getting out of the trap of, you know, I want the ROI on that improvement project, right? So there's an analytical trap that some organizations can fall into, again, looking for that near-term cost-cutting benefit. And so it's important for us to think about what's our role in sustaining continuous improvement in the organization. What are the relationships that we need to enhance and build, cross-functional leadership, cross-functional partnerships? And because lean is a continuous learning and improvement strategy, we do have to take what, you know, this idea of a learner's stance in being really thoughtful about, okay, what does my customer really need? The end user of the report, or the you know, the company's end customer when they're getting a bill, and how can I be really curious about that instead of presuming that I know the answer?
Yeah, and one thing on this was the last one about humbleness. You know, I mean, you know, accounting knows the numbers quite well, and they have to do analysis for external reporting purposes, but that doesn't mean you know everything about the company.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of like, I don't know, maybe you've met accountants like this, that they're thoroughly certain about everything. And they got the analysis down. They're certain this is the way the company works. This, here's the cause and effect relationships. And so it's important to be humble and realize, we don't know everything about the company because we're learning. If we knew what all the problems and issues are, we wouldn't have them.
Mm-hmm.
It's as simple as that. And so develop, be humble and learn and help the organization learn and build relationships. Go ahead, Mike. Finish up.
No, that's absolutely right. Actually, what I think I'll do, since I'm looking at the time, can I move forward to the third attendance check
Sure.
so we can get that done?
Yeah,
And then I'll come back and we can wrap up with that slide.
sure. All righty.
Okay, so I just want to talk a little bit about this. This visual is, and you can see as we talked about the two different roles, improving accounting on the bottom is really our financial management, our financial accounting role, the lean financial management of the management accounting at the top. But this idea of where to work, where to start, how to start is really depends on what's the need in either your finance and accounting team or your organization at the moment. Is your headache right now, or the opportunity right now really that's presenting itself, is to create some capacity so that the accounting team can get out of firefighting mode and start thinking differently about the business? Is there really a need for you to partner with operations in a different way in order to help them? And that's really the pull on the organization right now. So again, we'll talk about this more in subsequent webinars, but we just wanted to provide a view of really a roadmap and in some ways a maturity model for advancing your lean accounting practice, and thinking about it in these different ways, like we talked about, enhancing the value to customers, improving our own internal functions that are business necessary but not necessarily customer facing, and then just getting rid of the waste to create some capacity so that ultimately we're providing better information for the organization to improve.
Okay, so we can skip over this. So just a few final reminders. You're going to complete the survey.
Oh, yeah.
And it'll pop up as soon as I turn the webinar off. It helps us improve the experience. And one of the questions is, are there any topics you'd like us to do webinars on? If you are a certified public accountant and you would like to get 1 hour of continuing education credits, please email me and I'll send you the certificate. And in terms of learning opportunities, we have our webinars scheduled through June, and those are the topics. They're also on the BMA website. You can register, they're all free. We're going to go into more depth on these foundational practices through June. I have a workshop coming up starting next week, solving the standard costing problem. If you work in a company that uses standard costing, this workshop is not just training. There's a lot of exercises which compares how standard costing works in a lean company, and it could lead to poor decisions. So if you're interested in that, register or contact me. And then finally, there's the BMA website that you can join to be on our mailing list. All our webinars are recorded and you can gain access to them there. And finally, Lean Accounting Community Chat, which is the third Wednesday of every month. And that is, you only have to register once, and then you can attend any or all of them. And We have them scheduled all through December. There's the link. If you have any questions about this in terms of being able to register, let me know or let us know. So we're right at the top of the hour. We had a couple good comments in there from Ron Kirby, but no specific questions. So if you do come up with some questions, one thing to consider is attending the community chat and asking the questions as after you have had a chance to digest this content. So thanks for attending. Hope to see you soon, and everybody just stay safe and be careful out there.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.